Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. And it's time for camp notes from today, July 29th of 2025. The sixth day of camp, a blisteringly hot day again. 97 degrees out there was supposed to be the high. I don't know what the actual high was, but it was hot as hell out there. We had to maintain our fluid intake and stay in the shade as much as we could. Obviously, the players didn't have that option. They were out there without pads today. Few players were absent. Emory Jones and Ardarius Washington, who've been on long-term lists, NFI and PUP, respectively. Keith Kirkwood was not at practice today. Now, he was back for a day practicing on a side field, but hasn't seen action now in about a week. And we hope he'll be back, of course. Cornerback Bilal Kone went down a couple of practices ago and has still not returned. I do not know the time frame on that. I don't think we've heard that from Harbaugh yet. JAD, who went down yesterday, had an MRI apparently today. But John Harbaugh, when he got to the podium, did not know the results of that yet. So we don't have an update on that injury. Two guys returned to practice today. Rashad Bateman from a sick day yesterday. Jair Alexander from having his knee drained. So that, it's nice to have him back on the field. And he was out there playing some reps too. He maybe didn't have a full workload today, but it looked like he was, he certainly had some reps. Unlike a few other players have taken it real easy getting back in. Notably, Awuzie was out for several days, even though he was at practice. Now, the big news of the day, which was awful, is Isaiah Likely left practice with what appeared to be a lower leg injury. John Harbaugh at the podium said he rolled his ankle. We'll know more, but he thinks it will be a few weeks. Says it's lucky it happened early in camp. Now, we all know that John tries to make a positive spin on pretty much everything related to injuries. That obviously it sounds very serious in terms of what Isaiah has if John is willing to already put him on the sideline for a few weeks or talk about him being on the sideline for a few weeks from such an injury. So I imagine they have some idea from on field what the damage might have been, and hopefully it's not season ending and he'll be back at some point. We saw some punt drills today. There are three primary returners, I'll say. We didn't see as much of Wade today, but we saw Wester and we saw Anthony Miller, and we saw Tylan Wallace. I still say there's really no one standing out in terms of their ability to get set under the football in the punt drills. And it's an interesting challenge for the players who are back there because they're using a combination of live punts and the jugs gun to send the ball to them. And I'll say this, the jugs gun takes a much truer trajectory, and you know what to expect when it comes out of that, and you can read the ball a lot better, and players have an easier time getting out of that than a live ball. Stout has a very live leg and a booming leg, and it might come out in a lot of different directions. But he's not Sam Cooke. I'm not saying that with all the man of 1,000 directional punts, but he kicks the ball. He can boom it. He can kick it a little shorter. And the players are having a little bit of trouble. So we saw some backpedaling on the catch, which I don't associate with explosive returns. We saw very few of the really get into position and explode out of your return stance, I'll call it, in terms of what happened today. So I think the punt return team still has a long way to go. Looks like Wester is still a pretty good chance to have that job as a primary role, but Tylan Wallace is a veteran. He's still doing Anthony Miller, same thing. Miller may not be, on the 53, but he could be a guy that they bring up if they needed to have a punt return guy in some week. Anyway, that's it for that. We'll move on. They did the same set and snap drills at the beginning of camp. I asked Cadre if there was any name for that maybe I didn't know. And he said it's a glorified walkthrough. And I'm sticking with set and snap drills. So anyway, 6 straight days they've run those drills. Now here's the good news. The offense only had one false start today. So if you listen to the interviews, you'll hear me asking John the question of, did you do anything to simplify cadence? And he said, no, same as I said yesterday, that we run it the same way. I mean, there was a huge improvement today. That's why I asked the question. So he was maybe a little bit perturbed by the question. That's okay. But I really wanted to know if they'd done anything a little bit differently. And great improvement for the offense to only have one false start today. So that's a nice big step forward. The kicking battle, Hoyland did all the kicking today. He made 4 kicks from 26, 38, 43, 48. And then he missed from 51 wide right. That was his first attempt at from 50 plus that I can recall. I just asked the question, and I did not get an answer yet in terms of whether that was his first kick over 50, but I think it was of any time that we've seen. He might have had one in OTAs, but I don't think he's had one in camp in 6 practices that has been more than 50 yards. And he's getting very close to Luke now in terms of the total number of times each is kicked. And I believe Luke has missed 3 kicks and Hoyland has missed 4 kicks. Roughly, each one has had 30 kicks. So it might be 27 out of 30 and 26 out of 30 kind of thing. Hoyland wearing that funky GoPro camera again. And they've talked about that. That's to watch the foot placement primarily to make sure that is right. And I just love the way the Ravens do things. It's an organization that clearly understands kicking mechanics at a very high level. Randy Brown's an outstanding coach and is doing a good job of getting these guys to understand what they're doing biomechanically as they kick. Let's see. The offense and defense, they had a scored practice yesterday. Today's was being scored as well. And sometimes you get a little confused because they'll have situational drills where they'll flicker up something else on the board or flick up something for that series. But the last I saw, the defense was leading 30-25 for a lot of the time in camp. The defense has been a little bit ahead in terms of various things. So not shocking. I think Lamar had a better, more accurate day, maybe his best of camp to date. He certainly was elusive. There's some other elusiveness on the field that we'll talk about when the individual plays. But the defense is still, I would say, in general, a little bit ahead. I'm going to give 3 stars of the day. I think David Ojabo looked very good in terms of his pass rush drill reps. So they had a nice 4-on-5 session towards the end where the 4-man pass rush is up against the 5 offensive linemen. He had consecutive wins against the right tackle. It was Ozzie Hutchinson at the time. The first one was just beating him outside. The second one was a spin move back to the inside. So it's nice to see him have a variety of ways to win. Obviously not the number 1 right tackle for the Ravens, but still nice to see Ojabo doing some things well on the field. Chidobe Awuzie really showing off his downhill skills. He got beat on a crossing route that I'll get to a little later by one of the receivers, but he had pressure off the offensive left side to force a ball out early that was dropped then by Dayton Wade. The very next play, he had a very quick tackle unlikely that was off 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. And just a nice downhill play. It's an 11-on-11 play, not a 7-on-7 play where those things happen more often. Often the times the defense will be playing zone and it'll be easier for them to come downhill and make a play and look better than they really are. This was an 11-on-11. It was a good play. Tez Walker, another big day, made several nice grabs that we'll talk about individually. Did beat Awuzie on a crossing route for 15 yards and had a TD pass from Lamar for 5 yards from the 3-yard line. He had another comeback to the ball grab as well earlier in practice that I really like. Again, that's one of the big things for Walker is going to be how well can he come back to the football and develop routes that will complement the speed he has and magnify the value of that on some deeper routes. Let's talk through the book a little bit, and I'm going to go through this. I've been trying to do this because the last couple of times I've been trying to go to the Oriole game, and it's very hard to get these notes out in time, but I'm going to read through what happened in terms of individual plays. I've got a method for putting the ones I want to talk about. Jair Alexander on the very first play of 11-on-11 had a pass defense versus Walker in coverage, 10 yards down the left sideline from Lamar. On the next play or a play shortly thereafter, Lamar escaped the pocket and threw a ugly one-handed flip pass that was hauled in by DeAndre Walker for no gain. I would say this is a case of making -5 into 0 or -3 into 0. Really strange look. I was standing next to Kadri at the time. He thought the ball had been tipped at the line of scrimmage because it came out so funny, but it was a weird flip from Lamar. A nice pressure by Ojabo. I didn't mention that one earlier with him, where Lamar got the ball off late to Bateman, but Ojabo had already gotten pressure on the play. What else we got here? We had 91. I think that's Ravenel had a pressure on a play where Rush threw the ball to Marcus Major for no gain. So anytime you can force the quarterback to check down like that, that's always good. Let's see. TJ Tampa got beat by, I think it's Gilroy, number 87. Let me check my thing here. Yeah, Xavier Gilroy, number 87. Beat him on a crossing route, 15 yards between the numbers and the right hash. There was some half-speed drills. I don't take any notes from that. I think those are obviously not very interesting, really. Really nice downhill play by Roquan Smith to tackle Justice Hill in the backfield. Looked like about a loss of 5 on the play. Shortly thereafter, Marlon Humphrey had a sack of Lamar Jackson. One thing you're going to notice is the Ravens don't have any fear sending cornerbacks on the pass rush in these practice drills. A lot of times you want to find out what those players can do, but they're sending them off the slot, they're sending them off the corner, and I think they're trying to determine some things about what they have. So anyway, we had a nice completion. There's nothing really special about it, other than it took some time to get the ball out from Lamar to Kohler for about 10 yards by the right sideline. One of the big plays of the day, and one that could have caused problems. We had Keaton Mitchell make a run left. Keaton's been spectacular in camp so far. I probably could have made him a star of the day again today, but I didn't want to do it every day. I want to pick some other players that show something, and we're talking about somebody. But he ran for 15 yards off the left side, and then he got knocked down hard by Bo Braid. It's the kind of shot that I think would be ill-advised. It looked like a two-handed shove to the ground. That's just not what you're supposed to do in a practice like this. So I wasn't really a big fan of that. And then I looked back and I saw there was a flag on the ground. I didn't see who it might have been, but it appears that on a run to the outside like that, it probably was a holding call. So it didn't look to me like Keaton Mitchell derived an advantage from that hold, but it's bad on the offensive lineman for negating that play. We had a nice pressure. I think I talked about both those plays. I won't do it again. Those were both Awuzie plays that we talked about early. All right. We had a nice naked boot from Lamar. This one was going left. He threw about a 10-yard pass to Bateman between the numbers and the left hash. And it came out to do that. That naked boot came off a mesh point with Henry. Just kind of underscores all the difficulties the Ravens present their opponents in terms of showing boot plays. Now, the focus is really on Lamar. Obviously, the backside edge defender is like a guided missile to Lamar in that case. Lamar's still quite quick and can get away. And more importantly, when he runs left, he's not automatically dead in terms of throwing the pass. And of course, if this supports the zone run as well, whenever you're making a zone run right and you want to give Henry an opportunity to run off tackle, give him a chance to cut back from somewhere, having Lamar go in the opposite direction on a fake boot has a lot of value, and just indicative of what kind of problems the Ravens create for their opponents. Had a overthrow of Hopkins, 15 yards, 5 circle on the right boundary. There was tight boundary coverage from Wiggins. Wiggins is having a great camp. Looks every bit what the Ravens are hoping he's going to be. So that was a nice play. We talked about that. Let's see. I like this play. Adisa Isaac quickly moved across the formation to take down Rasheen Ali in the backfield for a loss of 5. Now, there were a lot of people there, but so the front side of the play was kind of getting jammed in, but Isaac was very quick getting across and being the first to wrap up on the tackle behind the line of scrimmage, which was impressive since he came from the far side of the field. We had a sack blown dead, and that was with Cooper Rush in there. I actually did not see who had created the pressure, but it appeared to be an all-out blitz with more than either 5 or 6 coming on the play. I know Teddy Buchanan was on one side of the formation. It looked like he rushed on the play. 96, that's Broderick Washington, had a nice pressure on Rush on a ball he threw to Cunningham, 15 yards in the middle of the field. That beat the combination of Tampa and Braid in zone there, or in over the top coverage at bracket, I probably should say. But it was a nice throw there. 39, it was Keon Martin, I believe. No, it's Keandre. Give me a moment here. Yeah, 39 is Keandre Jackson made a nice play. Quick tackle of Sam Pitts, who was um, after that was then stripped of the ball by Higgins. So Pitts had a little bit of trouble holding on to the football. Keandre Jackson set it up. The second man to the ball skills of Jay Higgins were apparent, and that was nice to see. We had number 56, that's Kamen Rucker, get a pressure off the offensive right side, and he beat Hutchinson there. Tough day for Hutchinson. Obviously he got beat by Ajabo a couple of times, but also beaten by Kamen Rucker in a regular 11-on-11 drill. Field goes by Hoyland there. Got some 7-on-7 action for you. Not too much 7-on-7 action is really worth talking about, but we saw Lamar have a lot of comfort throwing the ball to 89. The very first play through a 20-yard pass. It was incomplete, though, and Simpson, who'd had some real difficulty covering tight ends the previous day, was in on the coverage, really had tight coverage, and it was a lot better than what we'd seen from him in the first padded practice. Lamar threw a 15-yard pass to Walker, who beat Awuzie crossing. I believe we talked about that in the Walker Player of the Day stuff. We saw Rush roll right and throw a ball to Anthony Miller, 5 yards by the right sideline. That was incomplete again with Simpson in tight coverage. So maybe Simpson should have been on my Player of the Day list because he had a couple of nice coverage plays here. Unfortunate drop by Wester, 5 yards between the numbers and the right hash in front of Kwenku. That was from Rush. We had an overthrow on the right sideline, 8 for 16. And that was an interesting play because where the ball was slotted and where Wallace was on the field, Roquan Smith had undercut the play. If the ball was on target, it was going to be intercepted. It was kind of fortunate for the offense that it sailed high and didn't end up being a pick, but good play by Roquan to be in the right spot on the field. We saw, 86, Jamal Banks crossing to beat Longer Beam, 10 yards, 4 circle. That was from Jackson. Interesting. Those guys don't get a lot of opportunities. I'm sorry, I might have the number wrong. That might be 82 in my book. So I think we're talking about Wade there. Who beat Longer Beam. Jamal, if I have that wrong, I'm sorry about it, is all I can say on that. Sometimes I'm in a hurry to write things down, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Ruben Lowry's been one of the big players the last few days, and one of the guys is certainly ascending in terms of what his role is in the secondary, playing a lot of safety now, and it looks like that's his position. Basically, he's been moved from a slot corner role to safety. He actually did play a little bit of slot corner today, but in this particular case, Leary threw a ball to Anthony Miller, and Miller was able to leap for the catch, crossing and beating Lowry. We saw a DPI from TJ Tampa on Wade. That was 10 yards by the right sideline. And we had Rush to Banks leaping in front of Wiggins for about a 10-yard gain. So some nice individual plays in 7-on-7 made. What else do we need to talk about? We saw Gilroy lose coverage on a rub. Did not even see who the lost coverage player was, but he's crossing the field and in traffic, and he had a 15-yard completion by the right sideline. Keandre Jackson had a pass defense versus Sam Pitts, 25 yards down the right sideline in a one-on-one drill. It might have been a half-field drill, frankly, but the thing they were doing on it, the thing they were focusing on was the one-on-one matchup between Pitts and Keandre Jackson. And we also saw Ruben Lowry again lose Cunningham on an out about 20 yards, 5 circle, just a little bit slow to get after him after Cunningham made the cut. They did a red zone drill. The big play of the day was a pass intended for Patrick Ricard that he tipped up in the air and was caught by Awuzie for an interception, 5 yards between the numbers and the right hash, I would say, and that was the big play of the day. Sorry, I didn't include that in the Awuzie highlights, but that obviously was his play of the day. What else we got? attempted to hit Andrews in the end zone from Jackson. He overthrew the ball. Wrong play. Okay, the ball was relatively on target, but stripped by Malachi Starks in the end zone. So nice play by Malachi there.
You ever have one of those days where everything's off? Well, Mood can help with that. And let me tell you about Mood. It's the online cannabis brand that is changing the way we handle everything, from stress to sleepless nights, with functional gummies that are 100% federally legal cannabis. Mood launched to make cannabis affordable, accessible, and transparent, while at the same time supporting American farmers growing premium hemp on small pesticide-free farms. Their gummies are next level. Seriously, I've tried a few, and each one feels totally different. The Sleepy Time gummies, out like a light, immediately asleep. The Epic Euphoria, it's perfect when you just need a reset to feel good again. What makes them unique? Mood combines THC with herbs and adaptogens, so you get real targeted effects. You're not going to find this in your typical dispensary. And here's the best part. Mood ships discreetly to most states, offers a 100-day satisfaction guarantee, and right now you get 20% off your first order with the promo code RAVEN. Just head to mood.com. Find your perfect gummy and use the code RAVENS at checkout to save 20%.
We got a play where Broderick Washington appeared to knock Daniel Fa'alele to the ground, and then he kind of gave him a pat on the butt afterwards. So I'm wondering if there wasn't something about that where protocols were broken. He was saying either I'm sorry or hey, next time you'll get me, or whatever it might be. But it looked like Washington must have gotten the best of Fa'alele on that play. It was just a run for 3 yards, so no big deal on the play itself. Nice hole was cleared by the combination of Holsky and Vinson, playing, I think, right guard and right tackle at the time, for a run middle by Ali that looked like a good clean breakaway, and lots of space and first contact in level 2 or 3 on that play. But they kind of had a low 5 moment after the play, being happy about what they'd accomplished. I saw Wester come to the sidelines, got a little talking to from John Harbaugh. Not sure what that was about, but Wester honestly has had a little bit of a tough camp. He looked very good in some of the OTAs. He's looked less good in camp, and the Ravens have some options at that 6 wide receiver spot. So Wester is a guy who probably needs to show up in those preseason games and make sure he's not an injured player who loses some of these critical live fire reps. We had a nice pass defense in the end zone by Keon Martin. Actually, not in the end zone, just 10 yards by Keon Martin on Cunningham. We had a touchdown run, looked like about 6 yards maybe, where Keaton Mitchell was dragged into the end zone by Lucas Scott, the backup fullback. Kind of interesting play. Possibly someone's going to get flagged for one of these days, but the NFL officials don't seem to have any stones to really want to call it. Another pressure from Kamen Rucker. This time he beat Carson Vincent on a play. All right, they had another situational drill where they started with 1:26 to go, a 4-point game in the 36-yard line. And Lamar Jackson, on the very first play, was flushed from the pocket and ran 64 yards for a touchdown. The closest to come to him was Malachi Starks. At the line of scrimmage, the field was wide open. As Adafe Owe was asked about it, and so was John Harbaugh, in terms of whether or not, under normal circumstances, Lamar might have been caught there. And when I say normal circumstances, I mean not where the defense for the Baltimore Ravens is highly cognizant about their most important player not getting hurt. And he said he wasn't sure. I think Adafe Owe indicated in some ways that he's a little, frustrated by that sort of thing. So he thinks, maybe they could have caught him. But Malachi Starks came the closest. Maybe took a little bit of a bad angle, and Lamar all of a sudden was behind everybody. The crowd went wild. They pulled the first team off the field, so the coaches probably really believed it was a touchdown. They didn't try and blow it dead earlier than that for what it was. Then Cooper Rush came on, did his segment. We had a nice coverage moment from Longer Beam. Again, not a guy who's flashed tremendously hot in camp here, but he was in coverage of Miller, and Rush was forced to ground the ball near him. Rush had another grounded pass on a wide receiver screen that didn't look so great. And he Okay. Right. Threw another ball that was behind Malik Cunningham, who reached back and was able to knock the ball down. But it looked like Sanusi Kane was in coverage and might have had a chance at an interception. So that was a play that Cunningham actually made a good defensive play to stop, what was basically, I think, an unforced error by Rush there. I thought the last play of that sequence, Cooper Rush had a decent pass for 12, but Sanusi Kane, and this was in the middle of the field, had step-for-step coverage and was able to keep that from being complete. So nice little set of plays there for Sanusi Kane in terms of being in a good position on the back end. So that's always good. We had some defensive versus offensive line drills. I talked a little bit about what happened there. I did see Broderick Washington loop for a pressure. Looked like Mike Green was trying to set a pick on a play and was pushed down to the ground. So that's kind of unfortunate. And so a nice pick set by Kyle Van Noy that set up a stunt by Adafe Owe. And what else we got here? 98 had was in, that's Travis Jones, who was in for pressure on Leary. By the way, Leary had a lot of this drill. So how do you like that job, going in and having to basically get 1 or 2 reps in most of the segments, and then they ask you to do the pass rush drill where you can't get rid of the ball. It's just 4 on 5. You hold the ball for as long as you need to and maneuver around the pocket. It's not obviously where they want to be. Did see one false start during that drill by Bullock, and I believe that was the only one we saw the entire day. So it wasn't even in an 11-11. It was in a pass rush drill. Did see a nice bull rush from Adisa Isaac. He backed up Lichtenhand, who's a very tall player, offensive tackle, about 6'9", and Isaac did a good job pushing him back into the quarterback on a play. Okay, a few notes from the interviews. One of the first questions John Harbaugh was asked, I asked him about the reduced number of false starts, and he said the cadence wasn't any different. He was asked, can you carry 6 outside linebackers? He is hedging, in my opinion, but please listen to what he's saying. He's saying we can carry 24, 25, or 26 defenders. Well, you need to carry 26 if you want to carry a 6th outside linebacker, or at least that would be the implication, that to carry 1 extra outside linebacker, you need to carry a 26 defensive player. And that means only 24 offensive players, which is where a lot of the problem lies. I will just say, for most of the Harbaugh era, for most of the last decade or so, they have not deviated from 25, 25, and 3. It's always speculated because almost every year there's either one more offensive player or one more defensive player they'd like to get on the roster. And there's always talk, this is the year they're going to keep 26 defenders because they need so-and-so for special teams and he's their backup dime or whatever it is. It doesn't happen. So I don't think that's a reasonable thing. They said they could also keep 1 less lineman, keep 1 less inside linebacker. Listen to what John's saying. I think what they're basically trying to convey through the media is that they believe they have the freedom to keep David Ojabo if they want to, and also even if they want to keep Adisa Isaac. And despite the fact that the Ravens have 6 guys who are competing for 5 spots, apparently, every time Jadeveon Clowney's name gets mentioned, he's the landing spot is here in Baltimore. And I'm not saying it would be an awful move or anything, but their sacrifices would be made. If Jadeveon Clowney is brought back here for 1 year, it probably means you don't have the last year of David Ojabo, and it might mean you don't have 3 years of Adisa Isaac. So it would be certainly a sacrifice to get that done. He talked a lot about the incident in New York, heartfelt words, and there's a statement from him. I'll leave that to stand on its own. He did make a strong comment at the podium that the first responders, in particular the police officer that was shot, none of the people there anticipated dying that day, of course, and he had a lot of respect for first responders and particularly police in these kind of situations. The long TD run by Lamar, he said he's not sure if the defense would have caught him or not. This is analogous to all the stuff that's happening with Derrick Henry and his success running the football in this camp, is that nobody wants to get in front of Derrick Henry. And that's the reason why he's, running for big yardage. But there's, nobody wants to play the grab and release game with Derrick Henry by getting in front of him and potentially, having your head or shoulder ripped off in so doing, or even your arm would be bad enough. But I think also the protocols and the restrictions are so severe for not touching Lamar that he's not really in a position to say whether or not the defense would have caught him. So it's the honest answer. And Lamar's had some really impressive breakaway runs. They would have been, I'm sure, big runs because, hey, we know Lamar has a high percentage of big runs when he takes off from the pocket. But I'm not sure if they would have been touchdowns in each case. Always a pleasure. We had Chuck Smith at the podium. Great guy, very down to earth. I get the sense he maybe doesn't like to be at the podium. He says, this is the second and probably last time I'll be at the podium all season. It's like, yes, I'm at the finish line is kind of what I'm gathering from this. But he's very good. I mean, he's very good at the podium. He's very natural. And he said he wants his bigger guys to be able to play inside. Nick Meta asked the question of whether or not, Odafe Owe or Tavius Robinson might play inside. Now, the Ravens the last couple of years, as you know from listening to this show, have used Travis Jones and Nnamdi Madubuike or Pearson Madubuike in on most passing downs. So they've really gone with two outside linebackers. They've eschewed almost any race car. I don't know how many times they've run it in the last couple of years, but if it's any, it's a handful. And the rush nickel, even they've dropped that to almost no usage for the year. That I would say last year, less than 25 times, I'm going to say they ran any kind of rush nickel, and that's out of, 1,100 defensive snaps for the year or thereabouts. So not a common formation, certainly, that you see from the Ravens. Let's see, the next thing he talked about was Odafe Owe was asked about, and what had led to his 10 sacks. He said he'd added moves. It had been hard work that got him there. He talked about the learning curve and the effort from Mike Green, but he also mentioned that he thought he'd earned his stripes was the term he used in terms of the effort he's putting forth and what he's doing to try and to learn his role. Likes Aeneas Peebles. He calls him Pub, so that's apparently his nickname. He's short but very aggressive, a quick learner, and has multiple pass rush moves. That's certainly the pedigree he came with out of school. So good to hear that Aeneas Peebles is good, because if you really look at that defensive line, they've got 5 guys for 5 spots right now. And if somebody were to go down, it's not obvious exactly what would happen. I think Okoye might be the next guy up if John Jenkins went down, but Okoye's had some conditioning issues that have been very apparent during practice, and the inability to keep his wind. Has not played a ton of football lifetime. As I understand it, did not go to college. So they may be in a position where they go to the street, keep CJ Okoye around on the practice squad maybe, and see if they can get a year of him there and try and be in a position to do it. The good thing about Okoye is that no one else really knows who he is. They may find out from the preseason games, but very, very big guy. And Mike Green mentioned that, by the way, during his segment, as being his welcome to the NFL moment was seeing CJ Okoye next to him in the huddle and just how enormous he was. So I thought that was kind of cool. We still got Chuck Smith we're talking about here. Nnamdi Madubuike was frustrated by his inability to get sacks, but he did a good job of helping the other 3 players get single teams. Now, I would associate actually more of that with Travis Jones, that Travis Jones is the guy I dare you not to double. But Nnamdi Madubuike also is a hell of a one-on-one winner and a guy that some teams will go after with a second blocker to try and figure him out. But, pass rushing is a critical mass effort, and the Ravens certainly have a lot of pass rushing talent this year, along with a lot of hellaciously good scheme to go with that. I asked him a little bit about slot corner blitzes as well. You can see his response to that. It's obviously out in the interviews there. I think he maybe felt a little bit uncomfortable with the question. Maybe it's too schematic, and maybe he thought that it's Orr's decision on when to send such a player, and him trying to scheme up such plays. And that's not really necessarily what he's involved in. I think he does work with slot corners to try and help them learn how to rush the passer, just as he learns with others. But try and gauge maybe from how he responded to that question, what you want to take away from it. Talk about Mike Green. He looked forward to this week in pads to show off his power moves. Pads really allow for more bull rushing. There's just a limited amount of physical, getting to the body kind of work that you want to do against the offensive lineman when you don't have your pads on. So that's where the brother-in-law play comes in. That the pocket times tend to be longer, and it's Mike. If he's waiting to put pads on to really give some of his A moves, the opposing offensive lineman, I think that's probably a good thing. He said that Tavius Robinson is the vet he's bonded with most. Was asked about his run defense, said he takes pride in that. It certainly looks like it, in terms of what he's doing, but he didn't want to be known as just a quick guy. So he wanted to show off his bull rush. Didn't want to be known as just a pass rusher. So he shows off his run moves. I asked him about his coverage responsibilities and how those differed from Marshall. And he said, there's a lot more to think about. You got man-to-man, you got zone. And he thought the time would help him figure that out. Dafe Owe was the last of the podium. There was an interesting question asked that I thought the answer, it was a different question answered, but it's fantastic in terms of what he came up with. So he's asked, how does a new move come about? And I think the question was really more like, do you work with Chuck Smith, or do you do this? And Owe said, you marry up what you can do with the weakness of your opponent, and then you try and figure out if you can craft a move that'll work against that guy. And I thought, great answer. That's exactly what I want to hear. He said that he was aware the defense needs to get more strips when rushing the passer this year, that they too focused on hitting the quarterback, knocking him down, and maybe not necessarily getting the ball out. And the question was about the focus on turnovers and how the defense was going to contribute to that. I think that probably was fairly obvious from that. He was asked about Mike Green and what he sees in him. He says he's a dog, very twitchy, quick learner, very hard worker. So it's good, nice to see the comments about Mike Green generally be so positive. He does seem to be a guy who's working very hard, very nice seeming guy at the podium. So hopefully he's a guy who is an immediate contributor for the Ravens. He talked about the Zadafe again, talked about the pass rush needing more one-on-one wins and fewer coverage or cleanup sacks. That's obviously true, but you still need to figure out how to win ugly and be a mutter when it's a mutter's game. So a lot of the times there will be first pressure created that won't get the quarterback on the ground, and cleanup sacks and coverage sacks under those circumstances should not be a dirty word. They are, late sacks are good. Late quarterback hits are good. Late pressure can still force a quarterback to throw the ball away. Anything involving not being the first pressure where you get the quarterback on the ground, I'm still happy with it. So, and I also am very happy with the guy who got the first pressure and sometimes missed a tackle. So anyway, while I think the one-on-one wins are important and incrementalizing those, I think the coverage and cleanup sacks that the Ravens have had to generate the second highest total in the entire NFL, you got to look at that and say that's good team defense. Don't put it down for what it is. And this team understands what it takes to get to the quarterback. He was asked about his first memory of pads, and he said he was in high school. He's just starting to play football at about age 16. And his first time in pads, he's on a kickoff team, and he ran down the field because the coach knew he could run. He put him in that, and a much smaller guy knocked him over completely, and he wasn't ready for the hit. It's his first memory. He said, "Yeah, he's going to be ready from now on." He was asked about the run from Lamar Jackson off the right edge and whether or not that would have been a TD, and he said he's not sure, but John Harbaugh definitely drills in the message with them not to hit the quarterback. Then he asked us about Jair Alexander, and Yeah, the thing first thing everybody seems to mention about Jair Alexander is how he talks a lot. And then he tried to make a differentiation between Jair Alexander's talking, which is just kind of constant, and there may be some more of a trashy component to it, and Marlon, who's just very different. And, obviously, these guys, they see a difference in the way these guys communicate. But to a lot of the media, and I think to a lot of the other people, you just have two guys who seem to be all aliens in terms of how they look at things. The best example I can give with Marlon is, what kind of mind does it take to think about what your team is going to look like in 100 versus one gorillas? One gorilla. I need 100 Ben Clevelands, and I need to run the formations and what. I mean, I just that whole stuff with it just he just thinks on a different level. Great football player. It's just kind of weird. Jair Alexander, I think it's more of a competitive trash talky thing, and Adafe talked about him talking pretty much all the time when he's on the field. And obviously, some new celebrations, including the seatbelt that he's brought to the team. So good stuff. Time for me to go to the Orioles game. Really appreciate you listening. Be back with more this week. A couple more. Look back to the one-score games episode if you like an analytics episode, and talk about why I think Warren Sharp is really off base in terms of his talk about one-score games and the Ravens' actual success in those, just not as much as the Steelers relative to their two-score games. Anyway, we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.